Welcome to our presentation today as we go into AAC device mounting fundamentals. AAC device users are unique. So too are their needs for an AAC device mount. It is for this reason we will be exploring the fundamentals of AAC device mounting. In today's presentation, we will be working to achieve the following learning outcomes. These are: identify 3 types of device mounts, identify 6 components of a device mount, identify the factors in choosing a device mount. But first, why is AAC device mounting so important? There are 3 major reasons why AAC device mounting is such an important topic. First, let's talk about safety. When we talk about safety, we want to consider the device user, the communication partners, and even the device. A mount can help ensure safety. A device mount provides a secure way of holding the device in place during use. Appropriate use of the mount prevents the AAC device from falling, which can injure the user, others, and the device itself. Proper mounting also supports proper positioning, which reduces physical pain, strain, or injury. A mounting device also supports proper usage. A mount holds the AAC device in the correct place for the user. This helps to ensure proper device usage by providing a way to keep the AAC device at the most optimal position for the AAC device user. Proper positioning for AAC usage allows users to operate their device effectively without experiencing strain, pain, or fatigue. It also helps ensure the AAC device is readily available at all times and wherever the user goes. Overall, when a device is mounted properly, the user is more comfortable using it and it is easier to use. This means they are more likely to continue to use it. This reduces the likelihood of a device abandonment. For example, if a direct select user has a device mounted to the correct side of their chair within easy access, they will be more likely to use their AAC device. Now that we understand the importance of AAC device mounting, let's look at each of the 3 primary types of mounts: table mounts, floor mounts, and wheelchair mounts. There are many different types of mounts and different manufacturers. 3 primary mount manufacturers that we work with include Daisy, Readapt Connected, and Blue Sky Designs. We mostly order from Daisy or Readapt Connected. Readapt offers a branded line of mount hardware called Connected, which is made exclusively for Tobii Dynavox. When you hear Connected, it is the Tobii Dynavox branded components of the Readapt line of products. Now that you know who makes these mounts, let's discuss the various types of mounts. Let's start with table mounts. A table mount is typically stationary and rests on a desk or surface. There are different types of table mounts. Some work only on flat surfaces, while others work on uneven surfaces. They are used by people needing extra support for their AAC device while sitting at a desk or table. In many cases, table mounts are preferred in situations where the mount must be used in multiple locations or must be frequently moved. They are often lightweight and easy to carry, yet they are quite sturdy. Table mounts can hold the AAC device upright, flat, or at a tilt angle. Next, we have floor mounts. The base of the floor mount rests on the floor. There are different types of floor mounts. They can either be stationary or they can be more portable with wheels. In many cases, rolling floor mounts are preferred due to the flexibility of moving to where it is needed. Floor mounts can have wide or adjustable bases to fit around recliners or wheelchairs. They have overhanging arms to position the AAC device properly. Floor mounts can be used by anyone needing a device mount. As I said, They fit well around big items such as wheelchairs or armchairs. They roll under and around beds, tables, and desks. Floor mounts are used to give flexibility in multiple situations. Finally, we have wheelchair mounts. A wheelchair mount attaches directly to a wheelchair, both manual and electric wheelchairs. There are different types of wheelchair mounts that fit each individual's needs, the type of AAC device, and the different types of wheelchairs. A wheelchair mount is typically the primary mount for a wheelchair user and may be used whenever the user is in the wheelchair. The wheelchair mount can come in many different styles and components. The mount style and components are guided by the type of wheelchair and by the preferences of the AAC device user. So to recap, there are three types of AAC device mounts, which include table mounts, floor mounts, and wheelchair mounts. Now that we better understand the three types of device mounts, let's dive into what makes a device mount by discussing the individual components of a device mount. We will be discussing the base, the frame clamp, the vertical tube, the horizontal tube, the tube connectors, and the quick release adapter. Let's start by discussing the base for a mount. For a floor or table mount, the base provides a foundation for support, portability, and flexibility. The base of a floor mount can be stationary or able to roll into position for convenience. The base of a table mount can be small for smaller devices or wider and more sturdy for heavier devices. They can also fold quickly for easy storage and portability. The frame clamp can also be called the fastener. It consists of an inner piece and an outer piece. The inner piece is what connects directly to the wheelchair. As you can see here, they come in a wide variety of styles to adapt to different types of wheelchairs. This piece is the most challenging piece to select when ordering a wheelchair mount. The outer piece connects to the inner piece and is the first connection point to the vertical or horizontal tubes. Let's take a look at a complete frame clamp, which consists of a joining inner and outer piece. As you can see here, this frame clamp consists of the inner piece, which attaches directly to the wheelchair. In this example, it is designed to fit completely around a 1-inch tube on the wheelchair. Notice the circular space at the top that wraps around the tube of the wheelchair frame. The outer piece attaches to the first tube in the device mount in order to connect it to the wheelchair. Again, notice the circular space for the mounting of the vertical tube. These pieces also come in a variety of styles, but don't worry, the inner and outer pieces come together, so you only need to select one type of frame clamp. However, this is where we have the most trouble. If you order the wrong fastener or frame clamp, the mount won't work and you will have to make a second visit just to get the client the right clamp. So in order to get the right one first, we need to consider a few things. Let's start by taking a look at some more frame clamps on wheelchairs and try to understand the thinking process behind the choice of each frame clamp. There are many types of frame inner pieces. However, we have identified 6 frame inner pieces or fasteners that are most commonly ordered by your fellow sales reps. These are the 1-inch round, which is typically used for a manual wheelchair, and the 1-inch side clamp, which is also typically used for a manual wheelchair. The next 3 are typically used for power wheelchairs: the 1-inch bolted clamp, the Permobil Unitrack, and the channel nut. And finally, the multi-hole adapter, which can be used with most any style wheelchair to provide additional flexibility in positioning and strength in attaching. Let's take a look at each of these. Let's start with the 1-inch round inner piece. This is the most common inner piece. It is most common because 1 inch is the most common tube size on wheelchairs. This is a typical manual wheelchair. The round tube here is a suitable location for the 1-inch round frame clamp. Note that the frame clamp should always attach to the frame of the wheelchair. Never attach a frame clamp to removable components of a wheelchair, such as the footrest or armrest. Components such as the footrest or armrest are not considered part of the frame of the wheelchair. This is the 1-inch round frame clamp. These bolts are removed and the clamp is placed around the tube and then reassembled. This frame clamp does not bolt through the wheelchair frame tubing. This clamp might be selected if the wheelchair frame tubing is 1 inch and there is adequate clearance around the wheelchair frame tubing. Adequate clearance means nothing is blocking the area. For example, there isn't a seat cushion or lap belt restraints blocking it. So if the wheelchair frame is 1 inch and there is adequate clearance around the wheelchair frame tubing, the 1-inch round frame clamp would be a good choice. Next, we have the 1-inch side frame clamp. A 1-inch side clamp is a type of inner piece that does not completely encircle the wheelchair tube. It cradles the tube and is not bolted into the wheelchair frame tubing. If a wheelchair does not have the holes for bolts, this frame clamp would be a good choice. In this installation, a side clamp is used. Let's take a closer look at a side clamp inner piece. One key feature of the side clamp is how much less space the clamp needs at the top of the frame. If there isn't adequate clearance at the top of the wheelchair frame, for example, something blocking the top of the wheelchair tube, such as the wheelchair seat, a side clamp could be the best fit. Remember, the 1-inch round would not work here because it completely encircles the tube and requires more space. The clamp comes apart by removing these screws. It is then fitted onto the tube and reassembled. You might use this type of frame clamp on a round wheelchair frame tube if you do not have adequate clearance for a 1-inch round frame clamp. The third type of frame clamp we are discussing is the 1-inch side bolted frame clamp. Let's take a look. This is the 1-inch bolted side inner piece, similar to the 1-inch side frame clamp we just saw, except it is bolted into the wheelchair frame tubing. Because it is bolted in, it is a good option that provides a greater level of strength for carrying heavier devices like an i15. Similar to the 1-inch side frame clamp, it does not encircle the wheelchair frame. So, it can be used where other wheelchair parts do not provide adequate clearance. There are 2 bolts that fit through the wheelchair frame's bolt holes. They connect the wheelchair tube fastener and the inner piece to the wheelchair. You might choose this frame clamp if you need stability for a heavier device. You have the holes in the wheelchair frame, but you don't have the clearance for a 1-inch round frame clamp. The Promobile inner piece is designed for use on Promobile chairs. What makes this inner piece unique is how it connects specifically to the Promobile wheelchair. Here's a picture of the track system on a Promobile wheelchair where a frame clamp would fit. This is called the Promobile Unitrack system. Notice the parallel grooves or tracks. This design is unique to Promobile chairs. If your client has a permobile chair, you will most likely use a permobile clamp. Some situations where a different clamp may be needed is in the case where there is no room due to wheelchair restraints or other items blocking the use of this track. The permobile inner piece has bolts and nuts that, when aligned, slide into the permobile wheelchair track and are tightened into position. The permobile frame clamp is only used with the Unitrack system on permobile wheelchairs. The channel nut inner piece is designed for use on chairs with a single grooved track system. Some models of chairs that feature this single track system include the Quickie S636, Jive M2, and models from companies such as Quantum and Invacare. Here is a picture of a standard track system where a frame clamp would fit. Notice the single groove. As always, there are some situations where a different clamp may be needed, as in the case where there is no room due to wheelchair restraints or other items blocking the use of the track. The channel nut inner piece has bolts and a single T-nut that when aligned, slide into the single track of the wheelchair and are tightened into position. The channel nut frame clamp is only used for single groove track wheelchairs. It is very important to have the wheelchair make and model and the pictures of the actual chair, as not all tracks are made the same and may require a different T-nut. In this picture, we see a multi-hole adapter in its final installed position. Let's detail the pieces of this frame inner piece. This inner piece is comprised of a multi-hole adapter, a piece that has multiple holes that can adjust to the available holes on the wheelchair tube. Behind that multi-hole adapter are special adapters to fit around the tube to provide a more secure attachment for the bolts and adapter. This multi-hole adapter can then accommodate varying positions of the outer piece. The outer piece can be added to any of the bolt positions on this inner piece, giving the mount more positioning flexibility. You would order this piece if you have holes in the wheelchair frame, need greater stability for a heavy device, and want additional positioning flexibility of the AAC device. Let's take a moment to go over any other frame clamp considerations that will affect the safety or use of the AAC device mount. First, if we sell it, we support it. If a mount is included, we support the installation and training of that device mount. Therefore, we need to make sure we order the right frame clamp initially. We don't want to keep our customers waiting for the replacement components. This keeps them from using their device. It also means an unnecessary follow-up trip for you. As noted before, a frame clamp should only be mounted to the frame of the wheelchair. Items such as footrests, armrests, or any other non-frame component should not be considered as a location for the frame clamp. In deciding on a frame clamp, you need to see the wheelchair itself. Don't make assumptions because you know the make and model. It is better to order the frame clamp when you are 100% certain and have visually inspected the wheelchair. The make and model of the wheelchair is important. However, seating options and tie downs can be added for the user after the wheelchair is ordered, which can impact the type of frame clamp you need to order. Remember, these types of wheelchair components can change the configuration of the available space. When you can inspect the wheelchair, take pictures. Include the AAC device in an optimal position to the user. Take pictures of the frame of the wheelchair and multiple locations where a frame clamp could fit. Identify which side the AAC device mount will be attached. Identify if there are available bolt holes for attaching bolt-compatible frame clamps. And just as importantly, keep a measuring tool with you to ensure the proper frame clamp size is ordered. Measure the tube size and document these measurements in your notes. A stroller-type chair may be considered mobility equipment, but we should not attach a device mount to it because the weight of a mount may tip the chair over. We cannot guarantee a stroller chair will maintain balance with a mounted device on it. And finally, do not remove any component from a wheelchair that is labeled WTORS or Wheelchair Tie-Down and Occupant Restraint Systems. These are crash-tested systems installed by the wheelchair manufacturer and should not be touched. This is very important in finding an available space for the frame clamp. If there is no label, it can be manipulated. Whew, that was a lot of information about frame clamps. Frame clamps are a very important area of AAC device mounting and where we often see mistakes. Your knowledge and success in this area of AAC device mounting will translate to great success for you and your clients. Now, let's move on to the next component. Vertical tubes are typically attached to the frame clamp or base of the AAC device mount. The vertical tubes can either be straight or curved. Straight vertical tubes, such as the one on the left, are available in multiple lengths and sizes depending on the user's needs. The S-curved vertical tubes, such as the one on the right, are available in different lengths and shapes. An S-curved tube is efficient in that it eliminates the need for multiple tubes and flexible joints. This provides greater strength. In the Salesforce configurator, where you will be building your quote, there are 3 predefined lengths of vertical tubes to make ordering simpler. These are the child, young adult, and tall adult vertical tubes. The difference between these vertical tubes is just in the lengths of the tubes. Use these items when you do not have exact measurements for your client. Horizontal tubes are the components that typically attach to the vertical tubes. The horizontal tube is used to bring the AAC device to a central position for the AAC device user. The AAC device can rest anywhere along the horizontal tube based on the user's preference and positioning needs. Tube connectors connect the tubes. They connect a vertical tube to a horizontal tube, as well as allow the device mount to be configured differently to offer greater flexibility and positioning. Using these components, vertical and horizontal tubes, and tube connectors, one can design a mount configuration to meet the exact needs of the AAC device user. The quick release adapter attaches to the horizontal tube. The task of the quick release adapter is to connect the AAC device to the mounting system. It is called the quick release adapter as it allows the user or caregiver to quickly attach the AAC device to the mounting system or to remove it. Quick release adapters have 2 major features. First, the quick adjustment levers. Quick release adapters may have up to 2 levers. These levers provide greater flexibility and adjustability of the AAC device. The levers allow you to quickly loosen the adapter, to slide along the horizontal tube, or adjust the tilt or direction of the AAC device. Secondly, quick release adapters have small or large faces. A small face is designed for smaller and lighter devices. A large face is designed for larger and heavier devices. These faces attach directly to the AAC device. Now that we have learned about the types of device mounts and the components of a device mount, how do you choose a device mount? Let's start by asking questions. These are questions that will begin your process in deciding what type of device mount to use. What is the access method of the user? Knowing the access method will help determine the best mount. For example, a wheelchair user who is using eye tracking will need a mount that is sturdy and does not bounce during use. A good type of mount to reduce this bounce would include an S-pole vertical tube. An ambulatory touch device user may use a desk mount that is flexible to the various positions needed throughout the day in their different environments. What is the optimal position for the AAC device? Knowing the optimal position for the device gives you an idea of the measurements and types of components needed. It will help you determine where and how the device mount components will align. For an eye tracking user, the AAC device should be mounted parallel to the user's face, typically at eye level. For a touch access user, the device should be mounted within the client's optimal range of motion. How is the user positioned? If the device user is in a wheelchair, it is likely they will be using a wheelchair mount. If the user is positioned to use their AAC device in a bed while laying down, a floor or table mount may be considered. If the user is ambulatory, their position may change during the day, and they will need a mount that is both flexible and portable, such as a table mount. What is the AAC device user's preference? Always ask. While a wheelchair user may typically use a wheelchair mount, they may prefer to have a floor mount positioned where they will typically use their AAC device. For situations where many transfers happen throughout the day in an AAC device user's home, might they prefer to have a more easily movable floor mount that rolls with them to each location? Similarly, in a classroom environment, might the team prefer a table mount to a floor mount if they are changing classrooms frequently? Who are the primary aides or caregivers for the device user? Knowing this information guides the support and training needs. We must consider who needs to learn how to use the device mount. Also, can they easily adjust, lift, or assemble the device mount? What resources can you use to help you answer these questions? Take pictures. A picture of the device being held in the optimal position will help determine the mount components that are needed. A picture is extremely helpful for determining the best wheelchair mount. A specialist can determine the location and type of the frame clamp and the types and measurements of the vertical and horizontal tubes based on the picture of the device being held in the optimal position for a wheelchair device user. When you take the picture, make sure to get clear side profile views of the areas where a frame clamp could attach. Take notice of things like transportation restraints, lap belt fasteners, cushions, and the available space or screw holes on the tubing. Make use of your AAC team, which can comprise of an occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech and language pathologist, vendor, educators, and of course the parents and guardians. Information gathered from these sources is critical to the use of the AAC device and to selecting the best mount. Your OT, PT, and SLP can determine optimal positioning for the AAC device and help with questions about access methods. Reach out to the vendor of the wheelchair for questions on mounting components or overall guidance about the wheelchair. Do not attempt to make modifications to the restraints, as this will pose a safety risk to the wheelchair user. Consult the vendor's website or the wheelchair user manual for more information when needed. You can also use your wheelchair mounting manual. Let's talk about where to find this. Take advantage of the wheelchair mounting manual provided by your tech support team. It can be found by accessing the North America Tobii Dynavox Sales SharePoint site. Then select OneDrive. Then select the mounting folder. This document features images and part numbers for your common mount components. Let's use the following scenarios to put our knowledge of device mounts, components, and considerations into practice. In each scenario, we will look at situational questions and try to determine what may be the best type of mount. Scenario 1. What mount solution would you recommend for an individual who uses eye tracking in a school environment? In this scenario, what questions do you think of right away? One question would be, is the student changing classrooms, or are they in one classroom all day? If they are in a single classroom, a floor mount may be used. If they are changing classrooms often, a more portable table mount may be more efficient. Also consider who will be moving the mount from class to class. Other questions might be, where will they be using that device in the classroom? Is there enough room in the classroom to use a floor mount? They may be in one class all day, but due to space limitations, a table mount may be the best choice. Another question might be, what is the user's position? Is the child in a wheelchair? If so, a wheelchair mount will most likely be the best option. Is the child mobile and working at a regular desk? If so, perhaps a table mount is the best because they can then move classroom to classroom. If the child lays down for part of the day and uses their device, they may need a floor mount. If the child varies their position throughout the day, a floor mount may be the best option to accommodate this range of positions. If this is a trial for an AAC device, it is easier to set up and use a floor mount temporarily. While a wheelchair mount may be requested, a floor mount in the temporary use for a device trial will be a more flexible option for positioning and evaluation. Scenario 2. What mount solution would you recommend for a child using touch to access their AAC device in a wheelchair? In this scenario, what questions do you think of right away? How about, where does the child use the AAC device? If they remain in their wheelchair throughout the day, they would benefit most with a wheelchair mount because it travels with them. Another question might be, do we have a picture of this child in the wheelchair with their AAC device in the optimal position? Remember that a picture of the device at optimal position is a great resource in determining what components might work best. Another question might be, what is the size of the device being considered? Mounted touch devices can be either large or small. Therefore, we will find a mount that is suitable to carry the weight of the child's specific AAC device. Scenario 3. What mount solution would you recommend for an adult with a progressive disease such as ALS? In this scenario, what questions do you think of right away? The first question might be, is the client in a wheelchair, or is he or she still ambulatory? This will determine if a wheelchair mount, table mount, or floor mount is best. Another question might be, what is the access method? Touch or eye gaze? For this client, the access method in the early stages of the disease may be touch, but we want to consider a transition to eye gaze. Another question might be, what stage of the progression is the client in? Understanding the progression of the disease may be helpful in understanding the current and future needs of the mount. Today, they may benefit from a table mount, but if the disease is progressing rapidly, consider a wheelchair mount for someone that is ordering a wheelchair. Another question might be, do they have a wheelchair? If not, and they want to get a wheelchair mount, do they know what model chair they are getting? Ask the AAC team if a wheelchair consultation has been set up. Get as much information on a new wheelchair as possible to make sure you order all the right components to match the wheelchair. Remember that even though they know the model of the wheelchair, a picture of the wheelchair is still important to know where on the chair we can place a frame clamp. Another question might be, can we get a universal mount? A universal mount is a term used by many companies to mean a system that comes with multiple mounts, usually two, such as a wheelchair mount and a floor mount. This allows a client to use the wheelchair mount when they are in a wheelchair and the floor mount when they are in bed. Always check to see if your area funds universal mounts. This may be an optimal solution. Now that we have come to the end of our presentation, let's revisit our learning outcomes. We have identified the three types of device mounts. Again, these are table, floor, and wheelchair mounts. We have identified the components of a device mount. These are the base, frame clamp, vertical tubes, horizontal tubes, tube connectors, and quick release adapters. We have also identified factors in choosing a device mount. We will consider factors such as the access method, the AAC device user's position and mount preference, and the optimal position of the AAC device. We hope you have gained knowledge in the fundamentals of AAC device mounting. Now, let's open it up for any questions as we finish our day. While we take some questions, I'm going to leave this survey link up. We really appreciate any feedback you can provide on this content. It allows us to make sure we are always bringing the most relevant and applicable content to you to help you better implement AAC with those that you work with. Thanks. After you complete the survey, come find me and I will give you your certificate of completion.